Welcome to Daryl's Little Corner. We're here in the studio tonight with Dr. Rex Yancey. Welcome to Daryl's Little Corner.
It's good to be here.
Oh, we're so glad you came. Dr. Yancey is the pastor at the Big Baptist Church downtown. Is that what we call it? That's what we call it.
Well, Mayor Hill used to call us B1.
It's big.
B1.
It's big. It's I had a question and I didn't know. I should have already asked. Is that the one that plays that pretty music? We hear chimes from somewhere.
Absolutely, we do have
It's
chimes.
beautiful. It's beautiful.
Plays at noon and 5 o'clock in the evening.
I love to hear it. Sometimes I'll be downtown for some reason. I'll hear them, and it just makes you think about church and the Lord, and it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful. I enjoy that. He also has a church program here on TV 19. I'm sure you've seen it, and you always know you're on the right one when you see the red choir robes. What time's your program on that? Be sure and play your program.
Thursday night at 7 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
Saturday night at 9.
And Saturday night at 9 o'clock.
And it's it's a very popular program. It really is.
Thank you.
Because if I miss it, I hear about it.
No,
I know what's preached, whether I see it or not.
We have a number of people that tell us that they watch the program, and we appreciate that very much.
It's a very good program. And your acoustics and your sound is so good. A lot of times things are, I know I film out a good bit at my house, but it doesn't have that good sound like you have. It's I'm not a good cameraman anyway. I've never pretended to be, but I don't get the quality that you have. It's a good quality film.
Thank you.
I know you do it at the church, and you do a good job. Let's get to know this man. Now, we know you preach at the big church downtown, which would be First Baptist. But we don't know a thing about you. I mean, maybe everybody else does. I don't know, but I don't. Let's get to know the man. Who were your parents?
My parents were Earl and Marie Yancey. I grew up about 2 miles south of Dumas.
Really?
Between Dumas and Pleasant Ridge.
Well,
Pleasant Ridge is my home church.
you're from here.
Yes, Temple
Well,
County. Our land joined the Union County line.
Where'd you go to school?
Pine Grove. Went to 6 years to Dumas, and the other 6 at Pine Grove.
Look what Pine Grove turned out. How about that?
1965 graduate.
You have brothers and sisters?
All of my siblings are dead.
Oh.
I had 2 brothers and 1 sister.
Are you married?
Oh, yes, I married
knew you were.
Ellen Pursuer,
Yes.
formerly Elmer and Ernie Ruth Pursuer's daughter. A lot of people know them.
I knew she was from here,
Right.
but I didn't know you were.
She was my high school sweetheart.
Oh, that's sweet. You have children?
We have 2 children. I have Lee and his family. They live in the Jackson area. And my daughter Lori and her husband Brian live in Cherryville, North Carolina.
Now, Lee ran for something, didn't he?
Lee was a state senator for 4 years, and then he ran for state treasurer, and he got in the second, but he lost.
Well, he did pretty good,
He
didn't he?
did good.
Yes, he
Proud
did.
of him.
Did just pretty good. Now, I tell you, it's just, it's just not as simple as people think it is. Because you got to be known all over the
It's
state.
very difficult to run a
He did
statewide
good.
race. It takes a lot of money.
A lot of times, too, they run the first time, gets their name out there.
That's right.
People get used to their name. He did good. No, he really did.
He has his college degree. He has
Uh-huh.
a master's degree from seminary and also a doctorate from seminary.
Mm-hmm.
So he's also a transitional pastor. And
Now, I don't know what that means.
well, like if a church doesn't have a pastor, they call it, used to be an interim pastor.
Uh-huh.
Now it's transitional pastor. And so he's at Bay Springs Baptist Church in Jasper County.
He fills in till they get one.
Right.
You got to talk plain to me.
Right. He fills in till they get one.
Oh, they let me
And he
talk to
works-
these college folks, but I'm just lucky.
He works for an investment company too, so he has those 2 jobs. And he's keeping his powder dry, maybe to run for another office sometime.
Tell me why they call you doctor.
Well, it took me almost 22 years to earn my doctorate.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a earned doctorate from New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's not a requirement of mine. I just tell
No.
people to call me for lunch. But what I told a person one time at Quitman, when I was at First Baptist Quitman, said, what are we going to call you now? And I said, well, you just call me Rex, because I didn't get a doctorate just to have a handle.
Mm-hmm.
But I just want you to know that I paid a price to be your pastor.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you, it's just not that easy to get one. And back in those days, it wasn't on the internet, was it?
Oh no. I commuted through college. I commuted through seminary. When Ellen and I lived in New Orleans, we commuted 111 miles one way every weekend to a church field, and then back with 2 small kids. So it was tough times.
You must have the most wonderful wife in the world, I tell you.
She's great.
Bless her
She's
heart.
great.
Okay, you were young and married. You had little children, starting a family. Kind of tell us about the early days.
Well, the early days, I started off in Temple County. I was at Mount Olive out east of town here in Lebanon. They were 2 half-time churches, and I'd preach at one Sunday and one the next Sunday. I think Mount Olive paid me $50 a week every other week, and I got 75% of the offering at Lebanon, which was usually around $22 every other week.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a student at college at that time.
Whew. That won't buy a baby meal. I'm telling you.
So
That is something.
it was tough times.
Mm-hmm. You moved a lot too, didn't you?
Yeah, the next
Over
year I
the
moved to Union County, to Martin Town and Fredonia Baptist churches. Both of them were half-time, and I lived at Martintown. And then at the end of that year, Fredonia built a parsonage, and I moved there, and both of those churches went full-time. And then I moved from Fredonia to Brewer Baptist Church south of Tupelo.
Mm-hmm.
Stayed
That's
there.
hard on a family. Isn't
Stayed
it,
there
moving?
3.5 years, and then I went into full-time evangelism, and I was gone like 8 weeks in a row, or 10 out of 11 weeks in a row, and so my wife had to take care of our babies while I was on
What
the road.
you don't feel for you just go do it. But bless your wife's heart.
Yeah, that's true.
Hard for her.
I left her
hard for
crying
her.
a few times.
Yes, bless her
Yeah,
heart.
it's tough.
Yeah, it is. But when you marry a pastor, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the sacrifice, and that's how it is.
Right, I saw a lot of people saved during those days.
That's great.
Preached like 28 to 30 meetings every year.
Mm-hmm. It's really, you just don't see in this day and time hardly to me as much as you did then. The Bible says there'd be a great falling away, and I think we're seeing it.
I think we're seeing it.
Mm-hmm. People are complacent about
I've
the
been in
things of
revivals
God.
where the invitation would go one time an hour and a half, and another time it went 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't that, it just couldn't stop it because
Mhm.
people would still just get up and come.
Uh-huh.
It's just a God thing. I had everybody
Yeah.
sit down, people still getting up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But you don't see much of that anymore.
No, I can remember when you get home, it might be 11, 12, 1 o'clock, and like I say, you couldn't help it. It just kept going, and
Right.
the Lord just kept moving, and you just don't, supper time, don't worry about it, you'll be there.
That's right.
That's sad. That is sad. But it did say there'd be that great falling away. But you've done a lot of neat stuff. Before we mess around, don't get it in, tell us about this Rotary you're involved in.
I got involved in the Rotary Club in 1992 in Pascagoula when I was pastor there at First Baptist Church. I served in the Rotary for 8 years.
What is Rotary?
Rotary International started in 1905 in New York, and it was started by Paul Harris. And Paul Harris got different people from different vocations, and they just started meeting over lunch. And the purpose of it was to have fellowship with people from different walks in life, and then also to find areas of need in the community that the club could somehow make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And so over the years, it's grown to there's over 1 million members now throughout the world. And so I became the president in Pascagoula in the year 2000, and then I've been the president here in Ripley since I've been here in the Rotary Club. And we have local projects and we have international projects.
Is this Rotary, is it a large group in Ripley?
In large, probably here we probably have 75 members.
It's pretty big for Ripley.
But it is big for
Yeah,
Ripley.
it is.
It's like I'd be, we have the classifications. There are hundreds of classifications, but I'd be considered clergy. Somebody else might be a physician. Somebody else in the banking profession. But it just brings professional people from all walks of life together.
All men.
Well, no, we do have
How about that?
lady members. Now, I was at Pascagoula when we voted to have lady members, and some of the older ones, weren't necessarily for that. But
Yeah.
anyway, we've gotten into the real world, so we have both men and women members. But in Ripley, for instance, we have a Coats for Kids project. Dr. Norris Howell supervises that, but every wintertime we give the kids in our county free coats. And we have different projects to make money in order to do that. And that's one of our projects. We give third graders all over the county dictionaries every year.
Now that's great. Yes.
That's one of our projects. And then there
I
are
don't ever hear about that.
Mhm.
They don't advertise it.
And then we have a student of the month from our south tip of schools, and the principal will come with the students, and we just award excellence. We give them a certificate and get their picture in the paper, and these are students that are recommended by either the teachers or the faculty. We give scholarships to high school graduates going into college.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So it's
Yes.
just it's just a good organization. Now that's some of our local projects, but internationally, Rotary International, the goal is to eliminate polio from the face of the earth.
Really?
And at this particular time, we are 99% polio free in the world.
I didn't know that.
But there are three countries, Nigeria, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, still have cases of polio. And our problem there is getting in and for them trusting people from the West to vaccinate their children. So there's still like 600 plus cases of polio every year. And the thing about polio is you cannot cure it. The only thing you can do is prevent it. So as long as there's cases out there, then there's an opportunity for it to spread.
I'm not too wise on polio. My grandson went to Afghanistan. Now, he's in the Air Force. Would it be a possibility of him coming up with it and bringing it back here?
Most of
Troops?
the kids in America have had polio
Well,
vaccine.
he has.
Yeah.
He has. But I just wondered if it spreads that way. I don't know a
I
lot
think
about
mostly it spreads among children 5 years of age and under.
Wonder what causes it. Is it in the water or just from person to person, or
I don't know. It is a
don't know
contact.
either.
It is a contact disease. It can be spread.
Oh, that is.
And I've had relatives with polio. It's back in the 50s. We had a lot of people in America that had polio.
I had a neighbor that had polio when he was a child, and one of his legs was just pierced away, and he, it was just a bone.
Right.
The other leg was normal, and he could walk, but not like he should have.
Right. That was one of our projects. Another
Never goes
project
away.
is like teaching people in Cambodia how to disarm landmines. We teach people in Ecuador hand washing stations, training for teachers, hygiene. A scholarship for a Japanese student to study effective adult learning methods, milking cows for farmers in Russia. Just a whole lot of projects worldwide.
I am so thankful that in America I don't have to know how to disarm a landmine.
Isn't that the truth?
And those people live over there, and this is a daily danger.
Absolutely.
It just, it just struck me. I thought, thank God we don't have to learn that. Now, we might need to learn to milk a cow.
Yeah, that's true.
My daughter has, she they bought a jersey, and she called me and she said, "Mama, how do you make butter?" I said, "You go to the store and you buy it." But she finally learned.
I can still remember churning butter at my grandmother's house like that.
Well, now that's the way my daughter did it. And she brought it over. She said, "Mother, this is real butter."
That's right.
And you know, I am so accustomed to that bought butter. I like it. Ain't that awful?
Yeah.
We're so accustomed to this. We don't know how to appreciate God's blessings that we live in. We take it for granted. We go to the store, we pick up a pound of butter, we go out in the yard, we don't worry about stepping on a landmine, you know.
Well, people come into this
We're
country,
so blessed.
they go to the grocery stores and they can't believe the options they have.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can't get just one kind of butter, you can get
That's right.
dozens of kinds
That's
of butter.
right.
You know.
And you can buy a chicken that's not hanging out and the flies walking on it. Yes.
That's true.
Yes.
That's true.
You know, you
So-
see those pictures from overseas where they have those markets in the street.
Well, I've been there and I've seen it, and
It don't look appetizing to me.
I've been to Africa, so I've seen that in Africa, and
What are you doing in Africa?
I was on a mission trip to
Really?
Zimbabwe, and went all over Africa. 50% of the people in Africa have AIDS.
Oh, man.
So we were told if we ran into an automobile accident or anything that we were not to assist anyone, we could just maybe call for help
Oh,
or something.
isn't it sad?
Yeah.
So sad.
So I've had an opportunity to be in Africa, Japan, China, Honduras, France. So my ministry's carried me in a lot of different portions of the world.
Well, did your wife go any with you? No.
My wife is a retired school teacher, so
Raised children, that's what she did?
She
Bless her heart.
raised her children and taught school.
But this, when you traveled, of course you traveled with the church, I'm sure, but when you traveled, was it not shocking to see the way these people had to live? Maybe that's their way, that's what they've always known, but it's shocking to us here.
Yes.
We're
Well,
so blessed.
if you go into Africa, it would be reminiscent of Mississippi in the 1930s during the Depression. It's still like that.
You know, in parts of Mississippi, it still is.
I think it does
Yes,
people
and-
good in America to go to some of these third world countries. It makes them appreciate what they got when they get back home.
Amen to that.
I tell you, we are blessed. We're
Yeah.
blessed. I go in a room, I just flip a switch, light comes on. You know, I can remember when it didn't.
Yeah, we take all that for granted.
We get up in the morning, we just do the heater, and a lot of folks just, well, we wouldn't do that. Tate he doesn't like the thermostat on the wall, and he juggles that stuff. But, you know, I can remember toting in wood and building a fire and,
Oh,
you
yeah,
know,
milking
freezing to
cows.
death. Oh, I can remember. It's just crazy. We would get out in the woods, and we couldn't afford saw, and drag this old wood up, and we'd prop it on the porch and jump up and down on it and break it where it would fit in the fireplace. Go in, build a fire, get warm, go back out and gather more wood.
The
You
warm-
know, we lived like
the
that.
warmest fire in the world I can remember as a kid is the kitchen stove.
Oh, yes.
The stove wood.
Yes.
I mean, we'd get up, we'd have 8 or 10 quilts on us. And we'd get up and we'd run into the kitchen and
Oh,
get by
yes.
that good fire in there.
You wake up and you can hear your parents in there fixing things for you.
I say one other thing about
It's fantastic.
the Rotary Club. We have what we call Paul Harris Fellows. And a Paul Harris Fellow gives $1,000 to the Rotary Foundation. And that is sort of like an annuity, or it's a foundation where the interest pays for this polio eradication. So the Ripley Club, probably 60% of our members are Paul Harris Fellows, which that is probably way above average.
That's wonderful.
So people have either given or someone has given in their name $1,000 to go in this foundation.
You know, it's a hard thing. People don't think about it. It takes money to do this stuff. And, you know, if you join something and it's dues, or that's, oh, well, I'm not paying for that, you know, and all they're after is your money. That's not so. Truly, it takes money to do stuff. You can't help people if you don't have the money to do it with.
We pay $55 a month dues, but we get our one meal a week, for the meeting, and our meals paid for.
But that's, you think about it. It takes that money
It takes money.
to help those people. You can't send, it's like going to church. Everybody hates to see the offering plate. Well, if there's no money goes in, there's no church. There's no lights. There's no heat.
That's exactly right.
We enjoy these luxuries, but it takes something to keep them going.
Right.
It really does. Tony, load that second disc for me. I got to asking around, and my friend had this little tidbit of information. She did. And she brought me a copy of this to the beauty shop. And it was very interesting. And I said, well, it'll take me a while, but I really wish you'd leave it long enough for me to read it. She did. And by that evening, I was through. I sat down. I am not a reader. I am not. But I just could not lay this book down. Is it still available?
It is still available from me.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you can see it on eBay. Somebody's read it and put it on the internet.
This is the most fantastic book. And I assume that's you.
That is me. And
Check that out. Could you see this little boy pastoring that big church?
now, here, everybody in Temple County will understand this, but that picture was made in 1958.
Mm-hmm.
And so most anybody my age in this county has a picture like that of them being at
From the fair?
From the Memphis Zoo.
Yes. Is it the zoo?
It's a zoo, yeah.
Now, I know Tate's got one. I think his was from the fair.
Yeah.
Him
Well,
and
it's
his-
either the fair or the
uh-huh.
zoo
Him and
because
his kids.
Memphis is about as far away as I got from Dumas when I was growing up.
Oh, yeah. That was a long trip,
Long
wasn't
trip.
it? Long
That was a
trip.
school trip I was on, and the story behind that picture is the fact my mother gave me 35 cents to go to the Memphis Zoo for a day field trip, and I spent a quarter of it for that picture.
Oh,
I had a
no
dime.
lunch.
I had a dime
Yes.
to buy a Coke
That's fantastic.
and no lunch.
That is fantastic.
But that picture was made about 2 weeks before I saved,
Oh,
so that's the only picture I have of myself during that
wonderful.
time.
That's wonderful. When did you find time to write a book?
Well, my whole ministry, I always sort of planned that someday I'd do that, and I did not keep a diary, but I kept a mental diary.
Uh-huh.
So when I was in Pascagoula, I just got, I had the computer, I had the book form I wanted and everything, and so I just wrote it from memory. And it's actually what it is, it's an autobiography.
Uh-huh.
It's just a chronological
It's very interesting.
time span of my ministry, and it just shows the roller coaster ride. Every person's life is a roller coaster. You
It
got
is.
ups and downs.
It is.
But with a
It
minister, he not only has the ups and downs of his family, but he has the ups and downs of everybody in his church.
else's. That's right.
So
That's right.
it'll make you laugh and it'll make you cry.
It does. It really does. It's amazing. And you have a interesting way of writing. I have read this one. When he came in and saw that one, he said, "Did you get the other one?" I said, "Why, no." I just happened up on that one. So he brought this, and I assume it's still available.
It is still available
Okay,
from
tell
me.
us about it.
All right, this one is, what I call it is post-Katrina thoughts.
Uh-huh.
And I call it hot off the press. The Jackson County, Mississippi newspaper is called the Mississippi Press. And so in June of 2005, they asked me to write a 1,000-word article every Saturday for the paper.
Ooh, 1,000 words is more than people think.
And then in August 29th of 2005, Katrina came through. And so it destroyed the paper and most everything else in Pascagoula, but we only missed one Saturday of publishing the paper because they sent it to Mobile, and the Mobile Register published the paper. And so I used that as an opportunity to encourage the people who were going through the aftermath of the storm. And I just sort of encapsulated my own feelings and pictured them maybe reading this over a cup of coffee or something.
Well, the Christian life sometimes, it's a lot of storms.
A lot of storms.
People
and all.
think when you get saved, everything's going to fall in place, and they'll listen to these that just promise prosperity and everything's going. It don't work like that.
Doesn't work like that at all.
No, when you go through trouble, the Lord's with you, but He didn't say you wouldn't go through that trouble.
But just to give you an
Yeah.
example, you know, we had probably 3.5, 4 feet of water in our home. And most everybody in my church, my church there was probably twice as large as this church here.
Mm-hmm.
Most everybody there either had water in their homes or they lost their homes altogether.
Uh-huh.
We had doctors who would come in with tears streaming down the eyes because they lost everything they had. We had lawyers who lost their office, they lost their files, they lost their homes.
That's horrible.
We fed 1,000 people a day at the church in Pascagoula. And then the Georgia Baptist Convention set up a cooking station in our back parking lot. And with the help of the Red Cross, we fed 10,000 people a day from our church.
A lot of people.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
And we did that over a period of a lot of months. So we fed over 500,000 people from our church parking lot
You
in
know,
the aftermath of the storm.
when you think about Katrina, you automatically think about the tragedy in New Orleans. But you don't think about the outlying areas, you know, that's tragedy too.
Yes.
You know, it didn't just hit New Orleans and stop.
Well, the thing about the Mississippi Gulf Coast, we didn't wait on the government to come in and help us.
Uh-huh.
We took the volunteers who came and the supplies they sent, and we got back on our feet.
Yeah, just do it.
And in New Orleans, they were waiting for somebody else to do it for them.
I remember up here, we were in Faulkner when Katrina hit, and we sat. Now my husband can't go in a storm shelter; he can't breathe. Got the lung trouble, and we sat on the couch. And I always say get out of a trailer, but we live in a trailer. It's our trailer, and we sat on that couch, and the walls shook, just like a washing machine was out of balance, spinning, and it shook, and we just sat there, and I just prayed. And the Lord spared us. But you think about it, how much more it would have been down south. I just can't imagine.
Well, the wind was 125 miles an hour,
Oh,
and the wave was like 35.
oh yeah, it would have took the trailer with
The wave
it.
was
Yeah.
like 35 feet high on the beach. Ellen and I lived a mile away from the Sound, Mississippi Sound, and we still had 3.5 feet of water in our house, a mile away.
Well, that just ruins it, doesn't
And,
it?
oh yeah,
Oh,
we
yeah.
had to tear everything out 4 feet and down. So anything 4 feet and down, we lost.
Oh, and you know, you think about water. We turn on the tap. That's water. This ain't that kind of water. You know, when it's a flood,
And it
there's
was salt
diseases
water.
and that's worse. And diseases and snakes and you know, sounds
Well, we had
horrible,
to-
but it is
You
horrible.
know, I just bought a rug from Foley, Alabama, $900. You know, we had to take it out and pile it up. All of our washing machines and refrigerators and stoves and Ellen's car had water up to the steering wheel.
Oh.
So it was out on the street.
Right.
And then you got all these limbs down, and the
Everything's
stench
wrong.
is
Oh.
awful.
Oh.
My freezer was turned over. It had ducks and fish in it, and it was a week later before I could get to my house. So it was just the biggest mess you ever seen. I've never seen anything like it.
And you know, they always say when it floods, don't get in that water. And people will always get in that water. It is so dangerous.
But we
So
had people that
dangerous.
came to us from all over America. I slept the first night that I got back to Pascagoula. I slept on the floor, no mattress or nothing. I didn't sleep, but I laid down. The next morning I got up and I walked outside my church, and there was this giant pickup out there. It's the biggest pickup I've ever seen. It was pulling a 32-foot travel trailer. And so I walked around, this man got out and he introduced himself, and his name was Lee Likens, and he was a dentist from Bristol, Virginia. And he said, it took me 16 hours to get here, but my wife and I just bought this camper, and we want to give it to somebody. Do you know of anybody that needs it? And I said, well, my wife and I don't have a place to stay. And he said, well, it's yours. So that day he signed that 32-foot travel trailer over to us. I got some guys from Oklahoma to take it out to my driveway, and we put it in my driveway. And my wife and I lived in that 32-foot travel trailer for 6 months. And it was very small, but it was much better than a FEMA trailer.
Oh, yes.
And you know, I tell people that
Just bless.
I'd take half a shower in the morning, half a shower in the evening. And that if you've been over in the bathroom, you know, you flush the commode and turn the sink on and everything else. You know, it's so small.
Yes, I have.
But we learned
That's true.
we learned to live in that. But it just you know, I can go almost anywhere now. Like I went to the Masters in 2008. We'd already moved up here, so I went to Augusta, Georgia. So we got on one of the outskirts of Georgia, and I told my minister of music, Tom, I said, there ought to be somebody here I know. And I got to thinking, and there was a couple who came during the storm. So I called them, and they said, well, we're going to the country club to have dinner tonight, and we want you to join us. So, you know, we went and joined them. And but to tell the rest of the story about the trailer, after we got my house back in order, I called Lee Likens up and told him that I was going to sign the trailer back over to him. You know, I wasn't going to try to profit off the storm. And he said, well, you sign it back over to me, or you sell it and send me the proceeds, and then I'm going to turn around and give it to your church so you can use it for disaster relief. So I sold the trailer for what he gave for it, had him to come down to the church and presented it to him, and he presented it back to us for disaster relief. So, you know, we still communicate with each other. We met in Gatlinburg and had dinner. You have to have a tragedy like that just to see the good people that they still are in America.
Right. That's right. You know, it's a fable that goes around about preachers are just after your money. That's not true. It's not true.
No.
There may be a few out there, but it's for the
When people tell me that, I tell them the
not.
field's wide open, jump in.
That's right. That's right. Tony, load that this too back up for me. That something struck me about this first book, and it struck me right on the front cover. It just it was an odd thing. I noticed on the very front part of this book, above the little picture that I thought was cute, the title of it was "Jerked Up and Caught."
Right.
Can you tell us a little about that?
Well, that's the title of my book, and a lot of people in Tippah County knew my mother. She died last year. She was 97, but when I was a kid, she'd say, if you boys don't behave, I'm going to jerk you up and whoop you. So that's the title of my book, Jerked Up and Called.
Well, tell me about this called. Now, a real preacher has to be called, don't he?
Absolutely. I wouldn't still be in it today were it not for the fact that God called me.
How'd you know you was called?
Well, I was saved when I was 10 years of age in Vacation Bible School, and so I was conscious that the Spirit of God was in my life after that time. But, you know, I didn't really grow like I ought to have. But in 1965, my best friend drowned on our senior trip in St. Augustine, Florida. And that was like a lightning bolt. That really jarred me. And I prayed that I would die there that day. But it wasn't me. He died, and I pulled him out of the water. And so after that time, God got to dealing with me about what I was going to do with my life. And I realized basically that I needed to live my life for two people, not for one. So it was through that experience that God started dealing with me and, you know, calling me into ministry. And it was a miserable time in my life because I wouldn't share it with anybody, didn't talk to anybody about it. It's just something I was going through. So I had to deal with that and try to get through that. And eventually I did. And I never talked to Ellen about it. We were dating at that time, but Ellen told her parents, and of course my father-in-law was a Methodist pastor at that time, that not to be surprised if I surrendered to preach. And yet I had never mentioned that to her at all. So,
Usually other people can see it before you can.
Yeah.
Because you're busy saying, oh no, Lord.
So, you know, I surrendered my life to ministry when I was 17 years of age and started being a pastor when I was 18. So this is my 48th year of ministry.
48 years. Wonderful. That's wonderful. Tony, while you're loading that other disc, what advice would you have for a young preacher that was just starting out?
Okay, for, you know, when people come to me, younger people, saying, I think the Lord's calling me to preach, I usually tell them, if you can do anything else and be happy, you do it. And the reason I tell them that is if God's calling them, they can't do anything else and be happy.
Mm-hmm.
But you need to have it nailed down. I mean, this is not something that you just want to experiment with, or your mother called you, or
Yeah.
I mean, this is something you have to know. If you don't know it, you're not going to stay with it.
Well, if you jump in and you try to pastor a church and it's not God called, it hurts all those people.
That's right. Hurts you and them.
Yes, it does.
And it's hard enough when you know
Uh-huh.
that God has called you.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get into it and that first little church scuffle you have, you know, it just it disappoints people and they just give up.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. You know, that's a hard thing, but when people quit, so many times they don't go somewhere else, they just quit.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's so sad. So sad. Oh, have you got my disc loaded?
Yeah.
Okay, show that. Oh, I've not made this easy for Tony. Y'all just look over it because it's not his fault. This is in 2009. Tell us where you were.
I was in the state capitol in Jackson, and my son at that time was a state senator from Madison-Rankin County. That's him on the left side of the governor, and I'm on the right side of the governor. And then, of course, Eric Powell was our senator from this area, and then Bill was our representative. So I was down there to open up the Senate in prayer.
Now, Bill has been a regular on this program, and he's probably familiar to people. That is such an honor. It's just an honor, you know. Not everybody gets that honor.
Well, I appreciate
And I just
that.
wanted to make sure we showed that. I thought that was the neatest thing. When I was looking around, I found that. I thought, oh, we have got to tell people. He was actually called to Jackson to pray to open the Senate. Now that's something extra, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is extra. And I've had a chance to do that several different times
Really?
from Pascagoula
Oh, that's
as
wonderful.
well as Ripley.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I just
And
thought it was
then-
neat.
Ellen and I attended the National Prayer Breakfast also in Washington.
Oh, really? I
At
found
at that time, my niece married J.D. Hayworth, and he was a congressman from Scottsdale, Arizona for 12 years.
Uh-huh.
So we were invited out. And of course, Senator Lott, Trent Lott, was a member of my church in Pascagoula that I was there for 15 years. So we had connections.
Oh, that's good. That helps, doesn't
During
it?
that time, we
Yes,
had
that
connections.
helps. One of my friends told me before we run out of time to be sure and ask you about upward basketball.
Our church started Upward Basketball. It's probably been 12, 15 years ago now. And Upward Basketball gives children from the first grade to the sixth grade an opportunity to play ball. And usually there's maybe 7 or 8 people on each team. And of course the goal is for it is not to be who wins or who loses. That's not the important thing. The important thing is that every child gets to play.
Uh-huh.
And every child, we give out stars at the end of the ball games for like best offense, defense, sportsmanship, Christ-like. So it gives the coaches an opportunity to affirm the children.
Mm-hmm.
And so this year we probably had 300 kids involved either in basketball or cheerleading. And then their parents come to the games, their grandparents come to the games. And for people who are not churched, it sort of breaks the ice that they can come into our church facilities, you know.
Oh, you look at that big church and you say, oh, well, you know, I'd never fit there. You know, I went and visited. They was just regular folks.
We're just country folks, you know. 300 in Sunday school is not a big church. I mean, there are churches now with 5,000 and 30,000 and
a
more.
big church to me.
So, you know,
But-
it's not a big church, but some people look at it like
Well,
it is.
yeah, I mean, you know, it looks big to me. But, I mean, it just, like say, you go in, these are people that you know from town.
Well, sure.
I mean, you know, it's not like they, you know, import them from somewhere because they fancy like, you know, they're just regular folks. And
Just give you a quick rundown. I started in Temple County, went to Union County, then to Lee County. Then I went to Clark County, which is Quitman which is south of Meridian. I was there 11 years, and then I went to Pascagoula 15 years. And I'd had chances before to come back to Ripley, but I'd always tell Ellen, you know, what's going to happen if we go back now and the people don't like us?
Oh.
You know, and it doesn't work out. Are we going to have to go back south again or whatever? But anyway, to make a long story short, well, you know, my wife retired from teaching. Katrina came through. I'd been there 15 years. My mother needed me here. Ellen's folks would need her eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And so God gave us an opportunity to come back home.
That's wonderful.
So it's been a good experience for us. So we plan.
I do think the folks like it.
We do plan to retire here.
That's wonderful. I noticed you said 300 children playing basketball.
I think that's correct.
That's a lot of kids. A lot of kids
I don't
that are getting
think
that witness.
Probably had as many this year, maybe, as we have had. But we've had as many as 1,000, 1,500 people come through our Family Life Center every Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about parents,
That's
coaches,
wonderful.
Referees. It takes a lot of volunteers to pull this off.
Yeah, I imagine
And
it does.
Dr. John Stanford was our leader this year, and he did a great job.
I imagine it does take a lot
I coach
of
a
work,
group of
lot
kids,
work.
and
But I was thinking 300 children that I believe every time that you bring the Lord to a child, you know, that's a witness that stays. You know, it's hard to reach people that are older.
it is.
It's what you get it in them while they're young. And
Well, as
and
a
I think they're
pastor,
great
as a pastor, I've
ministry.
asked people before in a lot of different congregations, if you were saved before you were the age of, say, 20, raise your hand.
Uh-huh.
85 to 90% of the people will raise their hand.
Mm-hmm.
And I can look at my ministry, and I've had a few, you know, I can count on my hands of people 65 and over that were saved.
Yeah, because
We
we've
get to
made it
thinking-
all these years, and yeah.
We get to thinking what folks are going to think if we do that now.
Well, that's right.
Peer
too.
pressure.
That's right too. You wouldn't think older folks was affected by that, but we are. I think we're worse.
Worse.
I think we are.
Yeah.
Because a kid will say, well, they'll forget about it later, or, you know, who were they talking about last week? An adult, they think, well, I have to live in this town.
Yeah.
You know, it's different. It's different. I think you're right. But, you know, I am so impressed that this church has such a outreaching ministry. You know, it's just, when I drive by, I think, well, you know, it's a big church, reach a lot of people, but I never thought about it reaching out. I mean, 300 children, and, you know, the work that's done from that church. It's not all done in the building.
No.
Yeah.
This last year we had 20-something people that went to Kamanaro, Africa, which is in Kenya, and we have adopted a village there. And one of our members gave enough money for them to build a clinic. Now, it's not like the clinics we
Do
have.
you fly over there?
They,
How you get
they did fly over there.
Fly.
Yeah. And we took up enough money for them to build a bigger kitchen so that they can feed the students who come to the school one meal a day. And for most of those kids, that's all they have to eat,
Oh,
one meal a day.
that's sad.
And it's
So
not
sad.
steak and potatoes, you know,
No.
it's something
That's
else. But
Just so
anyway,
thankful.
we have a lot of our people in the church who have adopted those kids. They know them by name, they have their pictures, and they give enough money to supply them with school supplies, shoes, clothes, what have you.
So blessed here. Just
And
so
then,
blessed.
you know, a big portion of our budget, probably 13 or 14%, goes to missions in the United States and around the world. So it's a very mission-minded church.
That's wonderful.
And then Upward Basketball, we have a great children's ministry, great youth ministry.
But you know, truly, unless, well, even if someone's house burns, there's help out there.
Right.
Our needy people seem like are a lot better off than the people that are well off there. You know, we just don't realize how blessed we are in America.
Right. We
You
give
know.
a lot to the Good Samaritan Center. You know, we have a benevolence fund where we help people with their electric bills. The church does a lot that a lot of people don't know anything about.
You know, really, that's true of most of our churches. You know what they do? They just do as unto the Lord.
Right.
They just do it. And, you know, I get kind of, my bank account gets low and my work gets a little slow and I get sorry for me and I think, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. But, you know, we're going to do a lot easier than them folks are going to do.
All you got to
Yeah.
do, all you got
Yeah.
to do is look around.
That's right.
You'll
Absolutely.
start feeling better.
Absolutely. You know, we're so blessed in America. But I don't know how that you have found time. Well, I guess a lot of it you delegate. You know, you put somebody to do something, rather you can't.
Oh yeah,
there's no
you
way
can't.
do
You
it
can't
all
do it
yourself.
all. Yeah.
Yeah, because you know it just wear you out.
Of course,
You just can't.
in this church we have a minister of music, we have a minister of youth, and a minister of children.
That's wonderful.
So,
And wonderful that you've got faithful people that are willing to do
right.
that.
Then you got volunteers that work around them. You can't do it without volunteers.
Because somebody that just shows up intermittently, that's no good for you.
No,
You got to have somebody you can count on.
right.
Somebody you can count on.
Absolutely.
And well, it's that way in anything. You know, it's people are there every time a door opens. That's your thing. That's your help. But our time has caught up with us, and I do appreciate you coming.
I appreciate
this
the
so much.
opportunity, and I really want to thank the people who watch our television program. That's why it's on here. We want to share the program with people, especially that can't get out to church.
Uh-huh.
And we're also on the radio, 50,000 watt station, so we have a good bit of response
That's
from
great.
both of those.
That's great. Give your times again.
The time is we worship at 9 o'clock. Sunday school's at 10:10, 6:30 at night, and we have Wednesday night supper at 5 o'clock, and then we have a lot of different activities for children, youth at 6:30 on Wednesday nights.
And if you cannot get out, be sure and watch them on TV 19.
We will appreciate
This is
it.
a wonderful thing. We've enjoyed this hour together. I appreciate you tuning us in. Be sure and watch the Jeter Family program Saturday night at 7 o'clock. Tune us in again next Monday at 7 o'clock for Daryl's Little Corner. May God bless.